There is the AMFI data, which is out at the bottom of your screen as well. The net equity inflows have increased for the previous month, as against the month of November itself. For December, it's 41,136 crores. This compares with 35,927 odd crores. The mid-cap, funds have seen a little more inflow than the previous month as well, 5,093 crores versus 4883 crores. The large cap too has continued to see some up move. What's interesting is that after October, there was a brief dip in November. Now numbers have increased sequentially as well. So from 41,865 crores in October, it went down to 35,927 crores and now has inched once again month on month, and that's a positive net equity inflow that there is. And we've also seen some decent inflows into large caps, mid caps, as well as the small caps. What will be interesting to see is whether SIPs continue to trend above that 25,000 crore mark or not. No reason to believe they won't, but whether they grow beyond that or not is something that we'll be keeping an eye out on too.
Interesting. The one number that I'll be watching out for is the sectoral and thematic fund inflows. And that is also because after an entire year of almost 6 to 7 months of inflows of over 10,000 crores, that number has seen a dip in the month of November, and that too contributed to that net equity inflow number dipping as well in comparison to October. We have Sandeep Bagla, who is the CEO of Trust Mutual Fund, who is joining in for an immediate reaction on this. Sandeep, good afternoon. Thank you for joining in. It almost seems like the numbers are back to a status quo, right, as they were in November, almost at a similar level, and the large cap flows have remained relatively consistent, and the mid cap flows continue to increase as well. What do you make of these numbers prima facie?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on the show. See, I think this trend is very, very strong and it is very much intact. So I think one slight dip in the last month was because there was a dip in sectoral and thematic funds. Probably because there were lesser number of NFOs, because NFOs nowadays account for 3,000-4,000 crores of collections in the NFO period itself. So I think the investor is quite bullish, I would say, on Indian equities, although the short-term outlook is still quite uncertain. But I think my understanding is most distributors tell me that their holding period for their investors has become far longer than earlier, going as high as 3 to 5 years now. And I think with that kind of outlook, if somebody has those kind of surpluses and the flexibility to invest, I think this is as good a time as any to invest in India. So I think this trend remains strong, it remains resolute, and I think the flows are also fairly constant.
All right. So the investors are extremely mature now, increase their holding period, bullish as well, despite the near-term uncertainty and volatility that we're seeing in the markets. We also have Akhil Chaturvedi, who is the Executive Director and Chief Business Officer at Motilal Oswal AMC, joining in. It seems like, there has been a recovery back to status quo when it comes to the flows after the brief dip that we saw in the month of November as well. Akhil, just wanted your thoughts on two things. One is, this notion that flows make markets or markets make flows. Typically, if the market does not give you returns for a bit of a period of time, it's then that the flows start to evaporate, or maybe people, start holding back on their investment plans for the horizon. So I just wanted to know that if the near-term outlook for the market is uncertain, will that impact flows in the very near term? And a lot of people are already sitting on fair amount of underperformance from the small and mid-cap end of things, the broader markets as well. Could that be a cause for worry for future flows, or do you think maybe the investors are past that worry and this will continue to grow?
So I think I think things have really changed quite a bit in terms of how investors think in terms of investing into equities. Now, what you're seeing is that October was I think for the year it was the top month. It was a high month. November we saw the flows dipping down a bit, and then December has been I think one of the good months once again. I think clearly investors, in terms of their behavior, one thing is clearly coming out that they are trying to benefit out of the market volatility, right? So they believe that it's good if the markets are volatile, and if one is getting entry levels at lower prices, it's good for long-term compounding. I think that trend is changing. So several years ago, yes, what you're saying makes sense that, if the markets are volatile or if they are not making enough returns for a few months, then the flows kind of tend to slow down or SIPs tend to shut down. But that's not what is coming out in the last 6 months. I think last 6 months we have seen that markets have been extremely volatile with no clear direction, whether it's a bull market or a bear market. Broadly, we've been in a range, but flows have been, the SIP numbers have been moving up. Number of investors have been moving up, and the flows are also net positive if you look at net sales, broadly the range is like 2-3,000 crores. So some months you're looking at 42-43,000 crores of net sales. So weaker months you're looking at 38-39,000 crores of net sales. But clearly investors are become smart. I think that's a very, very happy thing to note. Now, yes, I think we need to wait and watch that if this underperformance sustains for maybe next 3 months, then whether the behavior will change and one will hold back and wait for the opportune time to come in. But for now, I think clearly it seems to be pretty okay in terms of the investor sentiment.
Sandeep, the mid-cap and the small-cap funds, they continue to garner inflows. Both of them, the figures are higher compared to the last month. And this despite most of these broader market names correcting anywhere between 20% to 30% from their peaks. Now, usually that would invite a lot of panic, but does that also imply that the investors are also more aware of where, of what and where they are investing in to carry forward what Akhil just mentioned?
See, while some names might have corrected by 20-30%, I think the mutual funds have done a far better job than that. So I have seen mutual fund data in terms of performance has been far stable. I think people have understood that volatility is a part and parcel of the markets. And I think you guys are doing a good job in terms of keeping us updated about the key events in the future. People know that there is going to be volatility in the US political scenario and their policy formations. People know that the economy is slowing down. I think most investing public has taken a longer term view, and I think they are aligned with the demographic dividend which India is promising. And we have seen that the scales of companies that we invest in changes quite dramatically over a period of time. I think this quarter end, I think some companies have become from small to mid. So I think there is a lot of growth at the small cap space. And I think a lot of new listings, new companies, new sectors opening up. And that is where the growth is happening. And that is why you are seeing highest flows in small cap funds compared to any other fund category.
All right. Akhil, your final words. You said that if there is underperformance for the next 2-3 months, we may have to look back and monitor how the flows picture pans out. But the very near future, you see no worries. Yes, it is stable, but do you see further, drivers for growth here over and above what the numbers are already? 41,836 in the month of October. Do you think that gets crossed anytime in the very near future?
See, obviously we have to wait and watch what happens after 3 months. I hope that things are, things are good and the optimism is there. I think clearly Indian investors have understood one thing, that India is a long-term story and one needs to invest for like 10, 15, 20 years and benefit from this whole India growth story what is playing out. And one is trying to take benefit of all the volatility which is happening in the recent times to buy at lower levels. Right now, if you just look at the numbers are not out, but if I just see my internal numbers for the first few days of January, I think the optimism is continuing. So I think if I just extrapolate the last few days of numbers in January, then maybe January also looks very similar to December, if not better.
All right, Akhil, Sandeep, thank you so much for sparing time and joining us today to discuss the AMFI numbers that were reported for the month of December. Thank you for sparing time, gentlemen. That was the AMFI data then. The December mutual fund inflows around about 41,000 crores, almost the same level as of October.